Through the mists comes forth RPGaDay! In the year 2021, RPGaDay comes back for its 8th year. A time in August when every day we tackle another question or topic by answering in a way that uplifts the gaming community and answers questions people might have about this crazy hobby of ours that serves to build the community and bring it up, that many of us make blogs about, video blogs, art, or great works. In celebration of the community of gamers, I welcome you to RPGaDay 2021. Hello, my friends. Welcome. I am Rob, sometimes Omnisci and sometimes the Dungeon Tutor. Today I am here to answer a question, a topic, if you will, from RPGaDay, our ongoing effort to build up the gaming community. Today is the 3rd of August, and this is the 3rd topic. Today, the word that we are tackling is tactic. Now, not all game masters are equal when it comes to the believable and effective tactics that creatures might use in response to a horde of adventurers. Some people have a difficult time in setting up encounters that make the players work for those successes and really appreciate a combat as something more than just a blob of hit points and a threat. But when tactics work, when the players can look back and say, well, that was really clever, or think that an encounter was that much more dangerous because the monsters use their heads, especially when the players weren't using theirs. Tactics can really make a difference in the scope and pitch of a role-playing game. But today we're not going to be talking overall about tactics or have a treatise on which tactics work best. Instead, a scenario for you. In a battle, discovering your enemy's plans can be incredibly useful. Destroying your enemy's plans and strategy can also be useful, throwing your enemy into full disarray. But how about this? Tactics used as treasure. Perhaps as part of the treasure that the party finds, they end up finding an ancient treatise on tactics, strategies, and other things. Some of these things do exist. There are various manuals in some games that allow the players to gain a new level of appreciation and sometimes a fair measurement of power. But mostly that is about the person, the individual, who is learning these strategies to perfect their bodies, to perfect their minds. But what if they were to find something that was a veritable art of war by Sun Tzu, but set in their world? Something that can inform the mind and build a talented general, to allow them to work better as a team. Something that can encompass conflict of all sorts, including that which adventurers might find themselves engaged within. Might that not be a valuable treasure? In such a way, you might allow the party at some point to discover a book written in ancient text. Something that no one alive knows the language of. And we'll even say that it's warded from the ravages of time, but also interpretation by just a glib spell. No, this is going to require some work. This is going to require them to find a sage of some sort, somebody who has a skill in dead languages. If the party works hard enough for it, the prize will hopefully seem to be worth it. Now, if the party is not interested in themselves in learning anything, and they're only interested in it for the value, perhaps they're looking to sell such a thing. After all, this is a thing for a great general. The group are just adventurers, after all. They're trouble solvers and problem shooters. Sure. For the commoners or for the nobility, whoever's paying for them. Maybe it's not as important that they get a book that would make them master tacticians. So be it. But perhaps, just perhaps, you can use such a book as an element of world building yourself, eh? So if the party finds something like this, something innocuous, a book, who cares about a book? If it's not magical and can't grant them great powers, then what use is a book, right? But once this book is in play, the party finds it. Maybe they sell it. Maybe they sell it for a princely sum if you're willing to give them wealth for it. Perhaps the book was the treasure in a dragon's hoard, and this is how they're going to get their payoff, Well, perhaps down the road, somebody else stumbles across this book. Maybe that someone becomes the big, bad, evil guy of the entire story. Hordes and minions, legions of terror, and for some reason, they seem unstoppable on the battlefield. Victory after victory, they win almost effortlessly because the master of the army sees what defenses they're up against and always seems to have the way to beat them, as if they've been there before. This is an interesting plot element that you've just created and added to your game. Maybe something you didn't think about at the beginning, but maybe this little hint, this little prod, might show the players that sometimes their actions have consequence, or their lack of action might have consequence. If they had given that book, say, to somebody that they value, somebody that they know would make an excellent general, someone who could use their powers for good, maybe that would help them to change the world in a positive way. But if they didn't, they just sold it off to the highest bidder, as adventurers are sometimes wont to do, to get their pay. Maybe they reap the rewards truly when they're staring across the battlefield at what seems to be an unstoppable foe. Oh, of course, the foe looks like they can be bested, but they've beaten so many others, almost effortlessly. And now the party will have to figure out how to defeat this army. How? Not necessarily with a flurry of fireballs, or an excellent charge and a leaping, scything strike, or even an assassin's blade. No, perhaps the way they do it is by taking away the inspiration that built the army, the horde of evil. Maybe it all comes down to a book. And if the party can deprive that army of that book, perhaps that army gets scattered. Perhaps they fall apart. Perhaps it's still a pitched battle, but now the emphasis is on defeating the enemy that is not invincible, that no longer has a perfect strategy in place. All because the party has acted and has done something good. Maybe this is just a scenario that nobody will use, but maybe it'll get you thinking about how you could take some element and call back to it in the course of the game. And the party might think to themselves, that seems familiar. That seems like something we had a hand in. And it's left marks, even though it didn't look like it was anything much. It left an indelible print in the world. And you set this up yourself. You put those tactics in place. Even if you yourself are not a master tactician, even if you do not have a firm grasp on what makes a side so much more adept at winning, maybe you've never read the great treatises on war. It doesn't matter. It's a plot element. What's important is that if deprived of those tactics, the enemy is not unbeatable anymore, and the party can be seen to be true heroes, even if they let that book go into play in the first place. So, that's my scenario for today, and you're welcome to it. Thank you for joining me. I, of course, am Rob, sometimes Omnisci, and sometimes the Dungeon Tutor. And you've been here with me for another session of RPGaDay. I hope to see you again for another episode as we continue on through the month of August. And until such time, thanks again. And until that next time, farewell.